Welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm Ket.
I'm Davius.
This is episode number 73.
I do need you to log into ESO. What happens to player mail if you don't check it? Will it just go away or will it bounce back to me?
I think if you've sent me an attachment, it
Mm-hmm.
might send it back eventually, or maybe it'll just sit there forever. I don't know.
Okay.
Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com. All right, it's going to be a good one. I think
It's going to be good. It's going to be good stuff. We got this. So it's going to be good. Good. Well, I'm going to need you to check that mail, because if it just expires and disappears, that's going to be a real bummer.
What, did you send me some drag wax or something, or what?
Can't go into details. Can't go into details.
Wow. Now I really got to log into this thing. It's been so long. I wonder if I remember my password.
I wonder if I remember my password. You can't say those things.
Grizzly Con says it gets sent back after 30 days. So
I trust Grizz.
Well, it's been 2 weeks, so we're safe. We still got 2 whole weeks.
I trust Grizz 99% of the time. 1% of the time I don't trust him is when he's on fortifications above me, standing over a pot of oil.
if he's standing over one of those oil pots, oh yeah.
So one time we're like, wait a minute, Grizz, wait a minute.
Slow motion Grizzly, no. Well, let's try to make a podcast.
Let's scroll in a bit.
Let's do a little scroll in here. Thing is, when's the last time you've logged into ESO, Davius?
I've actually been logging in. It's probably only been 2 days for me, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe not that. I've been logging in and doing some writs and here and there. And
okay, so you're still doing stuff.
I'm still scrolling.
Well, it's been a solid 2 weeks for me, man. And
2 weeks.
There's no need for concern. I still got my ESO Plus. I'm still totally diehard scrolling player. But we're in this like lull period, and it always seems like the 2 weeks leading up to a patch is like there's always a kind of a lull where there's not really much going on in the game. There's really nothing happening on PTS. So, I often use that period of time as an opportunity to go and play some other game that has kind of been on my radar lately. Of course, Elden Ring is just kind of obliterated all other video games, and it has completely absorbed my life and has disrupted my sleep schedule and my relationships with my family and all of that. So.
You can't convince me that you don't have another podcast somewhere about Elden Ring with another guy who really likes Viking-like people in the game.
my side podcast.
What's happening.
My side podcast. No, nothing like that. But it's just a really awesome video game. Definitely recommend it. But I don't know. We just don't have a lot to talk about right now, other than the patch is dropping next week, and I'm just kind of waiting for that to happen. My builds are already kind of updated, and we're just like sitting and waiting for that patch to drop, and then I think I have to change some jewelry glyphs on my Stamplar, and otherwise I'm kind of ready to roll. So I'm looking forward to the hybridization for the skill hybridization and all of that. That's going to be really cool. My Stamsork is going to be an absolute monster. My Stamplar is really not going to be that much different, but I think the way that she is changing is going to make her just a lot more effective. I think I'm going to want to play with her a lot more than I have been lately, and I'm looking forward to that because my Magplar has always overshadowed my Stamplar. Really, like my Stamplar is like the one that I like the most. But it's like when I think of like, well, how is my team going to benefit the most? How am I most likely to seal the win? Magplar, obviously.
Yeah, well, your Magplar, and I would never besmirch the old Betsy name, but your Magplar is old Betsy with team heals.
Yeah, exactly. Everything Betsy can do, the Magplar can do. Sometimes even better, plus the great group support. So Betsy will be able to compete with that now. That'll be really nice.
Maybe even more so because you have that that Magica, but you'll still have all the stamina that she has and the movability. You know, I guess their movability is probably pretty similar, but part of me just thinks that old Betsy's just a little bit better because of that more stamina focus. And so I think you're still going to have the Magica heals and now with this hybridization, you'll have the Magica heals that there, but she'll still have all her movement and survivability.
Yeah, I think she's going to have just the right amount of support to like draw me back to playing with her a lot more often, because like I was saying on the last episode, her personal survivability is already fine. And now that she'll have Breath of Life, she's not really, I doubt I really am going to use that on myself all that much. I'm going to really try to reserve that for teammates because I already have my own kind of self-survivability with Cleanse and Vigor and Rally.
Betsy doesn't she doesn't need a Breath of Life. She doesn't need that to stay alive.
You can't touch her anyway. She's not even taking damage. So, I think that's going to be cool that she's actually going to be sort of competing with my Magplar for my attention and my playtime and all of that. And that, I still call myself a Stamplar main in PvP, and I think I'm going to hold true to that. I was talking a lot about maybe being a Magblade main, and I don't know, maybe you can be a dual main kind of thing. I don't know, because I do like Magblade a lot, but Betsy deserves better. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. I live in that kind of dual main. Davius is always going to be my main. But Lord of Nords he's a main as well. He's my PvP main, and I have my PvE main. How about that?
Yeah, that's kind of how I am. Get is my PvE main. My Magblade is my PvE main, but he recently got good at PvP too, so that's just a cool thing. But I still think, as far as PvP goes, the Stamplar is absolutely I put my hands on the mouse and keyboard and just oh yeah, I can just put on a blindfold and know exactly what's going on. I'm in the zone with Betsy.
Yeah, that's pretty great.
Yeah, but anyway, hybridization. I bet there's going to be all kinds of weird OP builds and crazy stuff that no one's even prepared for.
We're going into a wild new world.
Yeah, we really are.
I was actually thinking about this, and I think the thing that's going to catch us that I'll say it's maybe not being talked about enough, but it probably on certain forums is being talked about like crazy. So if I sound like a fool, then you can call me out. But okay. I think the biggest change that is actually going to really catch people off guard is I really feel like the self heals are just going to be off the charts. Mm-hmm. These stamina characters that are just maximum weapon damage now.
Stamina necromancers.
Yeah, being able to throw that into a self heal, not even necessarily team heals. I think team heals will be there, but some of these characters that just slay, I think, are going to start. They're just going to be loaded up with this crazy self heal now, and I think that's really going to kind of catch us off guard.
Think about how hard a stamina warden already is to kill.
Yeah, now think about all those heals are going to be that much more powerful.
Mm-hmm. The intensive mender on a Stam Crow, it's nothing. It's not unfathomable for a Stam Crow to have 8,000 weapon damage.
Yeah,
with the intensive mender. I know. I think I mentioned in the last episode, my Mag Crow has 3,300 spell damage, and the Intensive Mender has an 11k tooltip. With that,
So, the Intensive Mender is going to be a big one for sure, just because that's an auto heal. You just throw it up there. You don't even have to worry about it. It's just going to be so cheap. Yeah,
it costs hardly anything. I think this is going to actually result in that ability finally getting nerfed, which is long overdue. It's been way overpowered its entire existence. Yeah. It's just this sleeper thing that doesn't get talked about. It's way overtuned for the cost and everything.
Yeah,
I think this is going to kind of make that obvious.
But you make a great point. Warden, their self heals they're already tough to kill. They're going to be huge. We're talking Stamplar. Stamplars with Breath of Life and Stam DKs. Bubble.
For Stamplar, that Eclipse bubble, I don't think I'm going to use it. I can't remember what the one that you put the bubble on yourself, but. If you ever see a Magplar with that thing right now, they will not die, and Stamplars are definitely going to be using that.
Yep, that one's going to be huge. And like I was saying, Stam DK, coagulating blood is going to be... I'm going to start using that on Lord of Nords.
Oh, yeah.
I think the self-heals are going to be...
It's going to be a very, very tanky meta, absolutely. I think as the year goes on, there's going to have to be some balance adjustments. Some numbers are going to have to change around, I think.
Yeah. I agree with that.
I bet they will. This is like going to be one big change. They can't like make every change that needs to happen all at once. They're going to have to do this thing. There's going to be some problems. I think we should just kind of expect there's going to be fun to be had, but there's going to be some headaches as well. And probably the following patches to come, there will be some adjustments that'll,
Yeah,
it's the ever going cycle. There's always a cycle. There's always going to be something that's OP and it's always going. Um, Elden Ring, though, man, such a good video game.
No balance changes needed.
Maybe some. Maybe they need to nerf a couple of bosses. But man, I don't know. I feel like I do kind of want to talk about this game just a little bit, just because it is what I have been doing the last couple of weeks. It's FromSoft's new game, the makers of Dark Souls, Sekiro, Bloodborne. They make these hard video games with these like really difficult boss fights, and this is their first open world game, and it's that same formula they've always had, that Souls style like game loop, but put into an open world. And man, I was skeptical of this thing, and it started getting into reviewers' hands, and we started getting like, that first week when reviewers had copies. Oh, we started getting all these like 10 out of 10 like best video game ever made, like crazy reviews coming out. And so like I had these like really high expectations, but I was also kind of like, okay, try to rein it in, because how good could it really be? So I pick it up just to see what the hype is all about. And man, it's probably like, I was probably 5 hours into this game and I'm like, this is the best video game ever made. It's like all I can freaking think about, man. It's such a good game. If you don't mind the difficulty, I understand that is a turnoff, and there is no easy mode. That's kind of like the famous thing for From Software. There is no easy mode. You just take the game for what it is, and that's it. Crimson says, didn't J.R.R. Tolkien write the backstory for Elden Ring? George R.R. Martin, different R.R. That's hilarious, because it is a Tolkien-esque kind of environment too, so that's just like so fitting. Actually, I read up on George R. R. Martin's involvement in this game, because I was wondering, because you haven't really heard much about that. And so the thing is, he did not write the story for this game. The writers at From Software wrote the story 100%, but they wrote it in a world. They set it in a world that George R. R. Martin created. He created like the mythology and did all like kind of the world building and all that stuff, and kind of the history of this place, all the things that kind of happened before, and the structures of their kind of monarchies and all these kind of their governance and all that sort of stuff, like the law of the land.
Interesting.
And then From Software kind of took that and made their story within that world.
So I've heard a lot, I've talked to you about this game, obviously, over the past couple of weeks, and I've heard great things about the look of the game, the feel of the game, the combat system, the difficulty. But I haven't asked you, is the story live up to all the hype as well? Is the actual backstory to the game, like, the actual story going on, is that just as good as everything else?
Man, it is, but the way this particular studio does stories and quests and stuff is very unique to them, and it in all their games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne and all of them. People say the same thing, that it's very vague, and there is a story happening, but they don't spoon feed you. There's never an NPC that just point blank says, "Here's what's happening and here's why." Like, there is a story, but you kind of have to look for it and try to search for the meaning of everything. And even when you do talk to NPCs, everything is so like poetic. It's more like you're getting a sense of a tone and a vibe, more than like this event happened and then this event happened.
Interesting.
So like, a lot of the story is actually told within item descriptions. So like, you might get a cool new sword or something, and you'll go into your inventory and it'll show like the stats and the special abilities that it has, but there'll also be some flavor text, and it says about where the sword came from and how it was used and why it was used and that sort of stuff. And through all that kind of stuff, there is a very detailed description of this world and what's kind of happening there, but you, the player, have to seek it out. They do not spoon feed it to you at all.
Huh. So is that kind of create a situation where one player might have, like the story may be the same perspective, but one player might have like a much more in-depth version where another player, if they didn't go to that, if they didn't play that style, they may have a much more vague version?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for some players, this game is just kind of a series of boss fights. Like you can just kind of quickly try to level your character up, get whatever gear you want to get, and just kind of bum rush the bosses and get to the end. But there is a very deep story, and I think it's super interesting because they don't treat you like you're outside of that world. They're talking like the NPCs and stuff are talking to you like you already live there. You already know a bunch of stuff, like so you, the player being outside of it, if you want more context, it's there. You have to seek it out, or you can just use the internet or whatever. But I find it really immersive that way. I find it like really easy to kind of forget that I'm playing a video game because of that. I'm just kind of here in this world. One, I guess I'll call it a complaint, but I also think it's cool, but sometimes I do think it's annoying is the way they handle quests is super duper vague. There is no journal, there is no quest marker anywhere. If you run into an NPC, there's nothing indicating that there's anything special about them. There's nothing above their head or anything, and you can talk to them and they'll have some dialogue, but then that's it. And they may have been kind of giving you a hint about a quest sort of thing that you should go do, but like you just have to put those pieces together based on just whatever they just said to you, and you're like, oh, maybe they're talking about this thing, but there's nothing to reference, and they don't. It never says like you've began this quest or whatever. Sometimes it's a little too vague. Sometimes they're just like, there's no way I could possibly know how to do the next thing in this quest without using the internet. But
Yeah,
I
that's what
also kind of.
I
Go
was just
ahead.
gonna say that really sounds like there's times where you're gonna get lost. You're just gonna get lost in the quest if at points you're just not gonna know, I can see that very easy needing some sort of guide at that point.
Absolutely. And even if you do kind of know the first thing, and then it might not be obvious that this next thing you need to do, and there's stuff like that. But also at the same time, I think that is intentional because I don't think they want you to just kind of beeline those quests. I think they just kind of want you to run into things by happenstance, and then when you come back around, you're like, oh, I remember this guy, and you kind of pick it up just by random chance as you're wandering around. I've found it pretty enjoyable. At times, kind of annoying because I did have to pull up Google and be like, "What the heck do I do next?"
It's they're forcing more playable hours out of the game.
But it's cool, and I really like the way difficulty kind of plays a big part in the. It's kind of like the core driving mechanic. Like, so this studio, they're known for making difficult games, right? You think of Dark Souls, and like, yeah, those games are hard. And like the only other FromSoft game that I've played is Sekiro, and it's a really hard game. I did not finish it. I bounced off a boss. I got frustrated, and I was like, "I'm not having fun here. I'm going to go
I
play something. I'm going to go play some Elder Scrolls."
I only laugh because I remember that that was we had conversations with that, and I was getting daily updates of your saga with that boss, and then finally it's like, no, you were like, no, I'm done
Yeah,
fighting with that guy.
yeah, exactly. Beautiful game, and I admire it and appreciate it, and all that. But I just didn't finish it. And this game is pretty cool. Elden Ring is pretty cool because it's that same kind of difficulty. Actually, I don't think it's as hard as Sekiro, but it's that same style of combat. It is difficult. It is very challenging. But I've had this experience multiple times where I come up against an enemy or a boss that just like I am no match for this guy, and I get to that point of frustration, just like in Sekiro, But in Sekiro, your choice is keep pounding your head against this boss or turn the game off. And that's kind of your two options. But it's an open world game. It's a huge, huge, enormous, beautiful map, like Breath of the Wild-esque kind of map. So you get tired of banging your head against this boss, just turn around and go have one of 100 other adventures you could be off having. The exploration is really, really great. There's awesome stuff just kind of all over the place. And the fact that it's also so challenging, even the lowliest kind of, lowby enemy that you come across can really ruin your day if you're not on your guard and paying attention to what's going on. So just kind of the inherent difficulty and challenge of the environment in general, it really affects your approach to exploration. And I think it ends up making the world feel so much bigger than it is, even though it actually is super huge also. But
Hmm.
you're every step, you're cautious. You're peeking around every corner. You're making sure that you're prepared for this journey you're about to go on. You have all your equipment, because if you get caught in the middle of a cave or something without any arrows or without, the stuff that you need to be effective, it's going to be a problem. And like the way Souls games work is like, you earn XP and then you have to get to these certain safe points to actually spend that XP. And if you die before then, you lose it. And then you have to run back to that spot to get it back. But if you die again before you get there, it's gone forever. So, like, you have this valuable thing that you can lose, and everything can take it from you. Like, everything that you come across will wreck you if you're not ready for it. And that sounds intimidating, and I don't really like to be stressed out like that in games, but in this open world, like where exploration is what it's all about, kind of setting, it really affects your approach to it. Like, think if you were like really in a situation like that in real life, how would you delve into a cave? You would be extremely cautious. You would make sure you were very, very well prepared. So I like that about it. And it's really not that difficult once you kind of get a handle on the combat system. You level up some, you find a couple of good weapons. You really do kind of start tearing through some things, and it kind of makes that power fantasy feel really cool because you are tackling some dangerous stuff.
Have you attempted the co-op? Because it has co-op options, right?
Oh yeah, in the chat right now, Crimson Knight has carried me through a couple of boss fights. Thank you
Nice.
very much, Crimson. Uh, yeah, we've teamed up quite a bit to take on some bosses and some dungeons and stuff like that. Um, the multiplayer aspect actually is a lot more like part of it than I thought it would be too. It's like you see these ghosts of other players like all the time, like everything that you're doing, everywhere that you go, you see these like silhouettes, and that's real time, a real player right now playing the game, and you just see it for a couple of seconds, but it's really cool when you're like in these like, say, these deep dark dungeons. It's like freaking scary and you're stressed out, but then you momentarily see another player going through the same thing, and it's like this moment of solidarity, and that's
I'm
just kind
not
of
alone.
constantly happening. Yeah, I really like that. um, and yeah, you can summon other players to help you with boss fights. And there's PvP as well. You can invade other people's games and fight them. You can invite other people to duel, and so there's a whole world of theory crafting and stuff for both PvE and PvP, just like ESO. It's I don't know, man. It's really dragging me in a way that a game hasn't in a long time. I'm probably going to be playing it for quite a while. Definitely not quitting ESO. It's a whole other thing. But this will probably be a game I'm playing in tandem with ESO for quite a
Sure.
while, I bet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would imagine that, and it sounds like maybe this, it's an open world game. The story has an end, but it maybe has some things that'll keep you busy for a while. But I feel
Oh
like
yeah, there's New
there's
Game Plus, and
there's
there's like,
just
oh, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna say I feel like that there's no game quite like ESO and just zero ending, just absolute
Hmm.
no ending. Me and you make the joke all the time of we think, all right, like we think we're getting our characters ready in ESO, we think we're pretty close, and then something will happen and be like, well, here we go, let's hit that
Yeah.
grind.
Yeah, and plus ESO is just like I have so many friends there. It's so
Hmm.
much of it is
Hmm.
a social thing, is why I keep coming back. And that, man, those battlegrounds, there's nothing quite like battlegrounds. Like that's just the
Hmm.
best PvP in a video game I have experienced. I really just love it. And this game Elden Ring has PvP, but it's all you can really do is duel. That's pretty much it. And I'm all about those BGs.
No BGs.
But yeah, I mean, we're not trying to be like a giant bomb type podcast where we just talk about all video games or whatever. That's just what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Is just playing freaking Elden Ring, man. It's just the best freaking open world game. Um, you've been playing some other games, right?
Yeah, so I took the time. I'm gonna go a little retro here. I took the time to I went back and played and beat the game. Final Fantasy VIII.
Mm-hmm.
So a little old school
Mm-hmm.
there. I'm a big fan of the Final Fantasy series, and so I went back and seven is like the super popular one. That's the one that gets all the hype, which I'll openly say that's my favorite one. So right on to it. It deservedly so gets the hype.
I'm pretty sure Final Fantasy VII was like the first that I was ever like aware of the series Final Fantasy.
That makes sense. And you know, I've actually played them all from 1 all the way up to, well, I haven't played the 11. I think that was their first attempt at an MMO. And so I didn't play that one. I did actually play their other MMO, but I won't, you know, ESO is where my heart is.
Sure.
But, you know, I grew up on that series and I loved those older games. And so 8's kind of sandwiched in between 2 of the really popular ones. 7 is obviously, like we said, the big hype one. 9 is also a very fantastic game. It's probably the second best game in the series in my opinion, and 8's kind of sandwiched in between, and so it doesn't really get the hype, but you know, went back and played it, and it's a good game. You know, you can't really compare it to the other 2. It's a totally different game. You know, that series has, you know, every single installment of the game's completely different and totally different story, totally different characters, and I actually had a lot of fun going back and playing a game that I hadn't played since I you know, was much younger, and so going back and playing it again and kind of having a different perspective on it, and it's a great game. I actually really enjoy it. It was a lot of fun going back and playing that.
Nice. I never played a Final Fantasy game.
They're good. I think you might. So I'll say this just because I you know, I feel like I know you pretty well. I feel like you would struggle because and if I'm offending anyone out, listeners, you know, I apologize. Final Fantasy's combat is not difficult.
It's not what it's about.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, there's features to the combat that can be cool, but it's very much like the long-term strategy. It's turn-based combat. You're not really going to be in the strategy within the combat is the long grind and how you build up your team over a long grind. It's about the build. Yeah, it's about a slow grind build, about what you put your focus in and things like that. It's not, the combat's not necessarily difficult. And there's harder challenges, you know, side challenges, side bosses in the game that can be extremely difficult, but it's not, in my opinion, those games just aren't about the combat. They're strictly about this story. And I do love the stories, you know, especially those older ones. And I'll point out 7, 8, 9, and even 10. Those are great games, all about the story, really in-depth, great stories.
That Final Fantasy, was it Final Fantasy VII Remake? Was that it?
Yep.
Apparently that's very good.
Yes. Well, and they, you know, all of, really, you know, Final Fantasy VII is this, you know, it's kind of this cult classic of video games, but when you go back and play it, and I grew up with it, so the graphics don't bother me because it's just, I remember it. Like when I think Final Fantasy VII, I think those graphics. But a lot of people that go back now are like, oh man, this is like colored boxes, which it is. It's just colored boxes, but it just doesn't bother me because I just fell in love with that game, and so I'll always love it for what it is. But when they did make the remake and they updated the graphics and you got to kind of see the world in a much more updated graphics, it really did kind of it was pretty awesome that they did that.
Nice. Cool, man. So yeah, that's what we've been doing the last 2 weeks, leading up to the launch of this patch. Tune in next week and we will have actually played some ESO. Or yeah.
When's the patch drop?
It's a week from yesterday. We're recording on Tuesday, so it'll be the upcoming Monday, March 14th, for PC, and then I think probably 2 weeks later for console, or is it just 1 week? 1 or 2 weeks later for console.
Yeah. By next episode, we're gonna be in ESO. We're gonna have some feedback on this patch for sure.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to get in there and shred some fools in that stamp sort, that new stamp sort situation, man.
He's gonna bust into BGs pretty much like the Kool-Aid Man in the 90s.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Get ready for it, Ric Flair mode all the way.
Oh yeah.
But probably tonight I'm gonna go back to Elden Ring, and that's
he's gonna break the addiction eventually. It's okay.
I don't know. I could play 2 games. I think I can juggle 2 games.
Yeah. ESO works very well as kind of a, we always joke about this. It's kind of a nice home game.
It's a home base.
Yeah.
ESO's home base. Absolutely. Absolutely.
It works really well for that, for sure.
Yeah. All right. We're going to call it right there, guys. Scrolling Podcast is still going strong. We're just in a lull, but next episode, get ready. It's going to be a banger. Going to be a real banger. All right. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.